Okay, we are live talking about defining ethics as a group and how it shapes leadership, as Shelby mentioned, and further how leadership development can help and encourage ethical behaviors. Anyone want to start?
Well, I think I'll actually kind of start because it's actually working at Starbucks kind of thing. That's one of our interview questions to new hires coming in is, in a sense, it's tell us about a time when you've seen an employee not doing something like ethically right and to get their perspective of things, because you think there's so many different pieces in our stores. Like we handle cash all the time, we take tips, even just making a beverage and food safety pieces that if we aren't doing things ethically right or we're cheating the system or making shortcuts, we're putting, either their stats involved or people's safety involved. So that's something I think like us asking those questions, you kind of start to see a true, what their thought process is of the new hires coming in. But just even as a leader, you're given these responsibilities and that how whole chapters go, how I spoke about power pieces and like once you get that power of being a leader, do you start taking those shortcuts or leaving work early or, like I don't get tips anymore. So when a customer hands me money, do I take it or do I put it to my employees because I'm not allowed to do that anymore, Mm-hmm. So you get those little dilemmas that come your way. But I set the example for my team, so it goes in my partner's tip jar because they're working just as hard as I am, and it's a team effort. So I definitely think the leadership, leader sets that tone for the ethical pieces in any piece of companies. So.
It all ties into the leading by example. The leading by example, the ethics of being ethical, and you're leading your followers, leading them by example. And one thing I was thinking about is that when a leader is not ethical, you're basically, and the followers see that, you kind of put them in a difficult situation. Mm-hmm. Because then, what do? I know in a previous class, it listed some steps to take if you come into a situation where you see that the company's being unethical. It was very interesting actually, as far as the steps that you could take to handle that type of situation.
Something.
Put the followers in a situation. It's like, okay, the leader is not being ethical, so what do I do? If I do this, I may lose my job. If what's the ethical thing for me to do as a follower?
Right. Something that I in like my term research has been courageous followership, mm-hmm. And the whole definition is kind of based around what happens when a leader deviates from an organization, like the organization's like values and ethical, their morals and standards. And so the whole idea is to be a courageous follower, to kind of keep your leader in check. And something that I kind of think about is like when my first job was like working at Publix, which is just like a grocery store, and the fact that it's a lot of young teens who work there, and a lot of times we handle a lot of money. And so that's kind of you have to be very, it takes a certain person, I guess, at that age to be able to responsibly handle money. And I think that has to deal with ethics, because there have been situations in their company where just anyone, like the types of people that work there are very great. It's just like a lot of young kids come in, and sometimes they've had situations where people have, taken money out of the cash register and they catch it, and, consequences happen. But that's kind of the big example in my mind that I think of when it comes to ethical leadership. So.
Well, those are all interesting. Sheila, first thing that came to mind for with what you said is the throwing away the food at the end of the night policy.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I remember struggling with at Starbucks is corporate. Well, we got to throw it away. Well, why? Like, I'm hungry. So I think of that, Yvonne, with you and your notes. Same sort of thing with the leading. You're the leader. If you don't choose to follow, you have this trickle effect where you trap people kind of in. Well, do I go against my leader or do I jump over them? What happens to my job? Kind of triggered for me like the whistleblower kind of theory, right? Yeah. Which is way bigger, right? But sometimes how we make the situation of almost as big as a whistleblower situation, right? If it's something as small as, well, he's, I don't know, not following a policy that is very important to you ethically, that the company says is important, but I think in our minds sometimes we make it as big about reporting as something that really the ethical thing to do is to report. I'm kind of going in a circle, but my point is I think sometimes we don't because of the fear of a consequence, even though it's doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that came to my mind is my current company. So my cousins own our company, and I run it next to my mom. And one thing that we've struggled with ethically, I believe is an ethics problem, I'm sure I'll share with you guys, is we employ a lot of family, right? And my salary has been based on the fact that they're paying for school. So that's a big sum that they chunk on how much they pay me salary-wise because they're paying it in full. And then my mom's is merit-based, but also we've both been told you're going to grow with the company, right? So I was here a year. We went from 300 units a month to 3,000 in less than a year. I'm like, that's growing. Like, grow, right? But what we're facing now is other family members who are employed making salaries who are not. We've been challenged by our owners that have said, no, they're stuck at the salary, let them do whatever they want. Put them in a job. So my personal ethics battle right now is, this is a $12 an hour job that you're paying a $50,000 salary for. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to that ethical standards, I think it varies in, I would say people would say, yeah, it's going to vary from a Starbucks, right, to a small company that's growing where we're just trying to keep things going. But I would be curious to challenge, at what point is there just an ethical standard that we follow? Because right now there's an excuse that says, well, it's just the way it is. And I don't ride well with that, and I won't stay with that. I love my job, luckily, but I just think it's interesting because there's those ethical standards that are set company policies, and then there's that ethical standards that sit next to the moral standards that we all kind of abide by in some areas of our life. So when I think ethics, I get this like sunken heart. It's like, ugh! I just kind of cringe, right? But I also think about the pieces that go into having to make those decisions, right? But I haven't had much exposure to what's happening is causing extensive damage, right, to someone else or harm. I did have someone steal from cash registers in one of my Starbucks. See, there it is again, is in one of my Starbucks stores. And she was fired, and that's an ethical issue. So I think sometimes we like to hide behind excuses because it's just the way things are. Or it's just the way things are.
Like,
I think
people have like the best interests and they know right from wrong. You know, like in any company, you want to hope that they really do know right from wrong, but it comes down back to their morals and values and things and how they can, uphold them and what they think is okay in the world.
Right. Goes back down to the core of the person too, I think.
I think something interesting that I kind of deal with, just the job nature that I have, and something that I'm always trying to push, whether that be ethics or morals, is kind of the environment. And Leah, I think you said something about Starbucks throws all the food away at the end of the night, and so I think that's really interesting because for me it's like, why don't you just compost it or do something like that? And that's where my mind goes. Right? But it's so true in the sense that people, and I think that's in my job, kind of ethical, moral leadership, whatever you want to call it, is really trying to inspire that ethical leadership in others to do well for the environment. And it's just it's something that to me, it's something that I'm passionate about and something that I feel like is an ethical or moral responsibility as us humans living on the earth. And it's not to go all hippie on you. It's just that's what I'm passionate about. And so I always see that, trying to inspire that in others, and people will come up to me and be like, oh yeah, in my apartment building, I'm trying to get all the people in my apartment and my tenants to get or in my landlord to get recycling in our apartment or composting bin in our apartment, and that little kind of spark of ethical leadership, you can call it, doing good for the environment, inspired by someone's morals to protect the environment, to harness it and conserve it and sustain it, I think is really cool. And I think that also leads into developmental leadership in the sense of like developing that person as a leader in their community and giving them aid to do so. Like a lot of the programs that Grow NYC has or is partnered with are programs to help people in the New York City community really become experts at composting, recycling, etc., so they can spread that to their community. So, yeah.
Well, and what's interesting that makes me think, this is one of the first conversations I think we've expanded out of looking at an organization, right? So we brought up an organization, now we're bringing up ethics with personal ethics, business ethics, NGOs ethics. One thing I can think of that you triggered in my mind is moving from Seattle to Florida. In Seattle, you have like 6 different garbage cans. You're required to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I to the Z end of the alphabet. And you get to Florida, and they're like, here's your bin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an ethical standard for state, for city, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of piqued my interest to think, well, we're not just talking leaders in companies. We're not just talking leaders in small business, Starbucks business. We're talking leaders in oneself. We're talking leaders, state leaders, mayors, government leaders who are making ethical decisions. I just thought that was interesting because our conversations have centered around companies lately, and it's cool to think, well, maybe I'm not a leader at my company, but I'm a leader for the space that I occupy. Right? So you're setting that example too. Sorry, that's what I was thinking. One note that stood out to me, going back to organizations, in our reading was the decision. It stated in here, one such dilemma is deciding whether or not to tell the truth. And that was coming from a leadership standpoint, right? So you're privy to more information, you're privy to salaries, you're privy to, all kinds of protected information that your people under you are not. So that's kind of what I'm learning now as we've promoted Raina. Raina is getting more access to management files. So really helping her through the understanding of seeing these salaries and saying, well, why is mine not improving, right, with this and this growth of this company? So it's been interesting. I would say from Starbucks to here, I share a lot more than I ever felt comfortable sharing at Starbucks per this penalty, to the moon of how I could get in trouble. But I've learned that that wasn't how I wanted to lead. And I've been careful about what I say, but I've also been careful with who I have chosen to promote to lead, so that information sharing also doesn't put me, so I fight 2 different ethics, right? Is that lying or not lying? And I don't like the lying, period. So it's more of, listen, this is where we're at. This is what it looks like. This is what we have in front of you. Whereas I might go to our owner and say, here's the numbers, but I'm telling the same story. So that's kind of the ethical battle that I struggle with personally is I don't like to lie, period. I like to be transparent, and it's been interesting. That goes back to that leadership as storytelling, I think, and that sense-making, those key points of how do you do that? How do you do it ethically? How do you do it fairly? Even with the desire to be truthful and honest. One thing I've struggled with.
And not sugarcoating it, right? Or I don't know, as far as promising something that you may not be able to deliver.
Exactly. That's over-promising. Yep.
Yeah.
We talked about that in one of our early meetings as things we didn't like about leaders, certain leaders. It's a very good point.
I think also where this comes into is like in high stress, kind of more crisis moments, where like I have been running events and maybe something goes awry. And so I think in that moment, like, there has to be a sort of transparency with the people that you work with, but also like you're putting the event on for someone else. Right. So you kind of also have to keep it on like the DL, and like not lie about it, but kind of dodge it to those who you're putting the event on for, if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think also kind of what you were saying is like in any situation, I kind of find it situational in the sense that if it is something like maybe a question and it's not something that you can really answer because of the position that you're in, I think that it's justified in some positions, and I also think that in some situations it's not. So.
When I think it all comes back to what type of leader your team views you as, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I said to my team today, I said, listen, I don't have an answer, but I'm going to find one, do they trust me? Right? I think it's not going to be trust based on that statement. It's going to be trust based on my history and what I've done with it. And sometimes it's very simple. I don't have an answer for you. I just don't. And I'm going to fight to the moon and back to figure it out. But right now, my honest answer is I don't know. But I think that, again, that goes back with your rapport, right? What if your credibility? There it is. Credibility. What you build, right there it is. I found it. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting. I think that you mentioned, Shelby, too, the stress. And what that made me think of was the emotion behind some of the decisions that we make. And that's related to stress and situational, as you were also mentioning. It makes me think of how many decisions we make that we turn around and go, wow, I was just having a bad day that day, and now I have to go clean it up. And really becoming the leader that says, I should just stop for a second and make sure that my head is on straight. I tell Raina every single day. She goes, well, I just can't get it all done. And I said, okay, did you tell your team that? And she said, well, yeah. I said, well, did you communicate to them what your priority is and what you're going to do to complete it? And she said, yeah. I said, then why are you freaking out? Right? If you are present, keeping your team going, then they're going to show up. So you have to demonstrate the ability to keep going. Back to that ethical, those challenges is when Raina has more information than she can share, she's still leading 8 people. I think the other piece was encouraging ethical behaviors was also part of the question. I think we
and developmental.
Yeah. How about how ethics shape leadership? Yeah.
And further, how leadership development can help encourage ethical behaviors.
Yep. And then I think for how ethics shape leadership, I think that's an interesting question because, Sheila, when I think of Starbucks, right, there's you and there's Starbucks.
Yeah.
And there's their ethics and there's your personal ethics. And they're going like this.
Yeah.
Trying to find a way to synthesize, right?
Well, because it's like from you, when you were talking about like lying, and I'm not one to like, I will do my best to always tell the truth to people, and I'm a horrible liar anyway, so anyone knows when I'm lying. But there's times where I do at work have to, like, so if I have to separate someone and I'm calling to get all their shifts covered, then I got the partner saying, oh, are they okay? Why isn't that so-and-so shift? And it's like, oh, no, they're fine. It's like, because I can't disclose anything about it because of them being separated. So it's like now I'm lying to my partners, but they're supposed to trust me. Yeah, so it's like I totally agree that it's like I have such high morals and values about things in life, and then it's Starbucks, and it's like I gotta battle with it. Because again, if not, then I won't have a job. Like it's challenging, extremely challenging.
I think so.
And I hate doing it. It's like the most gut-wrenching thing when I have to sit there and not, I have to fib to my employees about something because of the backlash that I would get if I told the truth.
Yeah. I can see that. Policies are funny. Ethics is a word that should be written in all caps everywhere. It's a big puzzle, right? I mean, then you have to go home and still look at yourself in the mirror. And that's usually part of me and Raina's conversations, too. I said, well, what did you say? And did you mean it? Mm-hmm. Are you going to wake up tomorrow and still think I'm Raina or I'm Leah and I'm confident? I think it's about kind of where your heart comes from, too. Mm-hmm. If your intent is pure. So.
We're about at the 15-minute mark-ish.
Okay, I thought we were at 19. But
19? Are we at 19? I don't know. I know I started the clock later, so.
Okay, I thought we were at 19. Whatever works for me.
I don't know where we're at. So if you said 19, then we're probably there.
That scares me. Does anyone have any? Either way, we've met the 15 minutes. Does anybody have anything else to add or kind of piece together before we
I just kind of think this is, I mean, it's, other meetings that we've done, we've been so, like, all of us have been talking, like, coming up with things, but it's like here we are talking about ethics, and we're all a little bit more quiet about some things, which is kind of, like, awkward, because it shouldn't, in my mind, I'm like, it shouldn't be, but yet can be such a gray area in, people, because it's someone's morals, and so it was just kind of funny to me, like, as we're going through, I'm like, oh, wow, we're actually not very talkative today.
Well, we're usually a little more like tie-dye, right? Like one's jumping, everybody's
yeah.
I think now we're like,
we got some crickets.
yeah, I think now it's like, well, what do I want to, we're talking about morals and ethics, like, think about that first.
One thing that I found interesting in the book is where they're talking about servant leaders. Servant leaders put the needs of followers before their own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then talking about the 4 principles to serve as the foundation of a servant leadership. Concern for people and stewardship and what was the other one? Equity or justice created by distributing rewards fairly, high moral character, fostered by self-understanding.
Wow, I love the self-understanding.
Yeah.
And I like that all of them are gauged, well, obviously because it's servant leadership, but the piece that it's about being true and leading with an honest heart for the most, but doing it in no favor to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That at the end of the day, you've served, and that's your satisfaction.
It's like a selfless act.
Exactly, and I think that's powerful. I mean, raise your team well, because they're a reflection of you. So.
Exactly.
That's a really good call out. Servant leadership. It's something I should write on one of these walls. Reminder, sticky note. Oh, awesome! Thank you for sharing that, Yvonne. Anything else, guys?
We're good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to watching. I will stop this first.